Hello guys, welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about Steve Yzerman and him being hired as a new Detroit Red Wings GM. Now the next GM of the Detroit Red Wings will be Steve Yzerman. So is this a good hire or a bad hire? And how can he help the Detroit Red Wings? Watch till the end to find out. Now, Steve Yzerman, just a few months back, was the Tampa Bay Lightning general manager, but he ended up stepping down due to family, personal reasons, and he was a free agent for a long time. He ended up going back to Detroit with his family, and now we get the official confirmation, not surprising news, but news that he will be the next GM of the Detroit Red Wings. And this makes a ton of sense, since with Steve Yzerman, he wanted to be closer to his family that is in Detroit. His family is all over Michigan, all over Detroit. He wants to be there for his family, and if he works with the Detroit Red Wings, that would be a perfect fit for him, the Red Wings, and his entire family. That's why he made the move to step down for the Tampa Bay Lightning, even though he did such a fantastic job over there. And I wouldn't say it was confirmed, but it was always expected that Steve Yzerman would go to the Detroit Red Wings, be the GM there, or at least be the next one after Ken Holland, and that's what ends up happening. Now, Ken Holland was GM, but with this hire, he will now be pretty much and solely the senior vice president of the team. So he was both senior vice president and the GM, but now Ken Holland will just get one role. Now, I'm going to be honest here, this might be the best move Detroit has made in maybe the last 5+ years. It's really been that long since Detroit has made a move this smart, but it is a very good one for Detroit. Ken Holland was an okay GM, and of course, fantastic one back in his day, but now he's starting to get some old tactics that definitely do not work in today's game, and we've seen that over the past few years now. And while Detroit is heading in a better direction, it still isn't that great, but hiring Steve Yzerman could change the whole team and the whole franchise. In my personal opinion, I think Steve Yzerman is the best GM in the league, hands down, 100%. I don't even think you could argue that for his time in Tampa Bay. He's my personal favorite GM for what he was able to do there and just change the entire franchise and the entire makeup of that team in just a few small years. And while it might be a little bit harder with Detroit than it was when Tampa when he came in, I still think Yzerman can have the same effect and turn Detroit into a very, very good team. And just with this hire alone, it makes Detroit so much better than they were just a couple of days ago. With Ken Holland, yes, he was a great GM, but I just do not know what the Detroit Red Wings were really doing when it came to direction, because they would sign all these free agents, and they would have all these old guys, but they were still in the rebuild, still doing that. But when it came to Ken Holland, yes, it would have been okay to keep him, but Steve Yzerman, now being the GM, puts the Detroit Red Wings in a direction. It puts them with obvious knowledge in the GM spot. And with Steve Yzerman as the GM, everything changes for Detroit in the management, on the team, and with Steve Yzerman controlling that team, I feel a lot more comfortable about Detroit becoming a fantastic team in the future than with Ken Holland. Now, first things first, you can start to get rid of some bad contracts like the Kaiser, Eriksson, Abdelkader, Derek Helm. That's a great start, but even with those, it will take some time for Detroit to become that contender. Again, they've only really been in the rebuild for 2 years now, and they need some more time and patience before everything starts to form around them. While they got some fantastic guys, obviously, with Larkin, Zdeno, Mantha, they got some solid pieces in Detroit for sure, but it will still take some patience, but I think Steve Yzerman will have the patience in the end to turn them into the true contender, and I think they could become. Now, some of you guys might know already, but I was very down on the Detroit Red Wings just a few months ago. I predicted them to be the worst team in the league. I really didn't see too much of a direction with them going forward because of how many bad contracts they had, how many old guys they had, and how bad I thought they were just going to be. But a turnaround is happening in Detroit a little bit when it comes to some of their youthful players, and having Steve Yzerman as a GM to lead that direction is going to be so good for Detroit just this year alone and for the years in the future. I'm really excited for what Detroit might come. I'm not really a Detroit fan by any means, but I think what they can become is very exciting, especially with the youth that they already have in guys like Zdeno and Chalowski. And for Detroit, while I'm certainly not betting on them to make the playoffs next year, the year after that, I wouldn't honestly be surprised to see Detroit in the playoff race and to make it. Especially with Steve Yzerman, again, proving that he can turn around the Tampa Bay Lightning so quickly. I think with the Detroit Red Wings, it's only a matter of time before Steve Yzerman turns that team into a contender like he did with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And for Detroit Red Wings fans, I would get super excited with this hire because the potential that Steve Yzerman can bring to Detroit is through the roof. Again, with Tampa, how good of a team that they become was a lot to do with Steve Yzerman, and just the franchise overall was a lot to do with Steve Yzerman. But with Detroit, again, they've been mediocre, they've had the playoff streaks, but when it comes to being a true contender again, Steve Yzerman is definitely a guy that can turn them into one, even if it might take some time. So in the end, I think this will be a fantastic hire for the Detroit Red Wings, pretty much signing the best GM in the league, and when you do that, it usually is a pretty good sign. And I feel like with the Detroit Red Wings, going into the future, it'll be very exciting to see what they do with some of the youthful guys they get, some of the youthful guys they get at the draft as well. But Steve Yzerman, being the Detroit Red Wings, the Red Wings are in good hands. But of course, with this video, I want to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below. So let me know, what do you think about Steve Yzerman being hired as the new Red Wings GM? Do you think it'll be a good hire or a bad hire? And how do you think he can really help the Detroit Red Wings? But if you guys want some more Grav videos just like this one, you can click on this card right here to watch my video about the Pittsburgh Penguins and how their dynasty might be over. But that'll be it for today, guys. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. Again, comment down below your thoughts on Steve Yzerman being hired as the new Red Wings GM. And I'll see you guys next video or stream. Goodbye.